This is practice. It is a hearing. What is it called? I don't know. I'm gonna say. Actually, it's not a hearing. It is a CSI expert, crime scene investigator testimony. Okay, and it just so happens the defendant is representing himself. So it's a pro per case. So those are always kind of tricky. You don't get a chance to hear them too often. And, you know, they come up. So it's just interesting how they have to, how things are done a little bit differently when there's a pro per. And this will be a good example of that. This part is very, very small, however. Okay. So defense attorney, you say very, very little. I squeezed in a couple of things as much as I could, but other than that, you don't come in until the end. And we're going to read this all the way through. It's almost 19 minutes. Okay? It'll be a little bit of an extension for you. And we're going to read in 15s. I know you guys have, this is the exhibit page, so I like to kind of show this when I can. Oh, look, I can show this on the camera. Anyway, you've got columns going across. You've got each witness. We're not going to come up upon these, but this is for the whole volume, of course. And their categories, it shows the direct, on what page, direct exam, cross, redirect, recross. And this is for the state at the top, the witnesses for the state, and the witnesses for the defendant. Okay? One way of doing it. This happens to actually be out of Maryland. So, I don't know how I got this. I don't know who the reporter is. But I came across it the other day. I thought, oh, this looks good. So here we go. I am the witness.
I am attorney for the plaintiff, Ms. Winfrey.
I am an attorney for defense, Mr. Muhammad.
I am the court.
And it's Ms. Winfrey.
Yeah, who did you say you were, Stacy? Court.
The court.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it.
Ms. Winfrey, for the record. The state calls Kimberly Clements.
Please raise your right hand.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you please identify yourself and spell both your first and last names?
Sure. My name is Kimberly Clements, Kimberly. Clements is Clements.
And Clements is your married name, is that correct?
It is.
And what was your maiden name?
My maiden name was Dunn, D-U-N-N.
And how are you employed, Ms. Clements?
I'm a forensic specialist with Montgomery County Police.
How long have you had that job?
For 5 years.
And can you tell the jury what you do in that capacity?
Our job is to respond to crime scenes as well as process evidence that is sent in to us, make photo arrays and develop latent prints, that sort of thing.
Do you have any specialized training?
I do. My educational background is in physics and biology. I have a bachelor's degree in that, and I have a master's in forensic molecular biology. And I also have taken a number of specialized training classes in various aspects of forensic science.
I'm going to direct your attention to Thursday, October the 3rd of 2002. Were you asked to respond to a crime scene at Fitzgerald Auto Mall in Rockville, Maryland?
Yes, I was.
Do you remember about what time you got there?
It was, I believe it was about 9:21 in the morning.
And what did you observe when you got there?
There was an area of the street that had been taped off with yellow crime scene tape, and a push-style lawnmower had run off the curb at a location there on Huff Court, which is the road that runs up behind Fitzgerald Auto Mall. And there was also a blood trail that led down from the lawnmower area down the sidewalk and up into the rear parking lot of the auto dealership.
Now, was the victim still on the scene when you arrived?
No, he had been transported.
And what did you do when you got there?
The first aspect of our job is to document everything as we find it. So I photographed the scene as I found it.
And then what did you do?
I also ran a videotape of the scene. And then I called out our collision reconstruction unit to assist me in preparing a sketch of the scene as we found it. After that, I proceeded to search the scene.
And what were you searching for?
Any evidence of the injury that may have, or the weapon, or what may have caused the injury to this gentleman. Any evidence that might have been left by the suspect. Just anything that could point us in the direction as to what happened.
Now, at this point in time, had you learned how the victim had been injured?
Yes.
And what did you know at that point, or what had you been told?
Actually, even before I arrived at the scene, when I was sent out, I was told that a man who had been cutting his grass had been shot.
Had been shot?
Yes.
And so what specifically were you looking for?
I was looking for any kind of expended rounds from a firearm, any kind of fragments from a bullet that may have, hit somewhere else or fragmented or may have exited the victim's body, or just any, tire marks, shoe impressions, anything that the suspect may have left behind.
Did you find anything of that sort?
I did collect a number of cigarette butts. I did not find any kind of projectile fragments, any bullet fragments. I did not find any cartridge casings. I did photograph some tire impressions, and I picked up some, miscellaneous items that were in the area that I did not know if they had relevance or not at the time.
So you collected those in case they might prove relevant in the future?
Yes.
Now, if you would look behind you to State's Exhibit number 20, and there's a laser pointer there, if you could just show us, just generally circle the areas that you searched.
Okay,
Do you recognize this, by the way?
I do.
Okay, if you could use that and show us where you were searching.
This cross street here that runs down the center of the diagram is Huff Court. And the parking lot also, just kind of above the center of that road, is the White Flint parking. I beg your pardon, Fitzgerald Auto Mall parking.
And for the record, you just circled those. All of these aisles of parked cars between where it says Fitzgerald Auto and Huff Court?
Yes,
Okay.
there is an entryway into that back parking lot for Fitzgerald that enters on to Huff Court, and there's a set of gates there. The victim's clothing, which had been cut off by the paramedics, was found in the parking lot up here, the Fitzgerald Auto Mall parking lot, and the blood trail ran, through the gate and down the sidewalk, and the lawnmower was maybe 15 or 20 feet down the sidewalk and just half on and half off the sidewalk. Initially, the scene tape ran from this white building here on Huff Court across this way, and then also across from this building, which I believe is the FDA building across. So it was building off most of Huff Court. After I had arrived there, we actually expanded that scene. So the entire Huff Court was cut off to through traffic.
And where did you search for projectiles or shell casings?
The initial report I had been given is that this gentleman was shot in the front. I knew he was looking at the evidence that he was facing this way, and he actually ran in the direction he was facing.
Well, now when you say this way, are you talking about
I'm sorry?
from Huff Court looking towards Nicholson Lane?
Yes, he was on Huff Court, and he was facing down towards Nicholson Lane, and after being hit, he ran in the same direction and up into the parking lot because I thought he had been shot from the front initially. I searched the parking lot of the FDA building and also the sidewalks up and down Huff Court.
And those are the areas that you've indicated are opposite Fitzgerald Mall on the other side of Huff Court, is that correct?
Yes, I believe that building is the FDA building down in this bottom right-hand corner.
And you said, you initially searched there because you had heard that he'd been shot in the chest. Did you ultimately get a different information?
Yes, after the detective came back from the hospital, I became aware that this gentleman had actually, Mr. Buchanan, had been shot in the back, at which point then I searched. The sidewalks go up and down Huff Court up to where the mall entrance is, and also the parking lot here, which is, I guess, opposite the White Flint Mall.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Sure.
Ms. Clements, if you would take a look at State's Exhibit number 23 and tell me if you recognize that.
It's a diagram of the crime scene.
And does it accurately reflect where the various observations that you made that you've testified about?
It is not to scale, but otherwise, yes, it's accurate.
Your Honor, at this time, we'd move admission of Exhibit 23.
I'll receive it.
Excuse me, counsel, what was that exhibit number?
I'm sorry, it's 21.
21.
I beg your pardon.
Thank you, Joe.
I'm going to ask you if using that laser pointer again, if you can show us where the where the lawnmower was when you arrived?
Okay, here we're again looking at Huff Court with the bottom part of the picture being the White Flint Mall parking lot. The lawnmower was just above the center of the diagram here along the sidewalk on Huff Court.
Now, can you see are there two gates, two entrances into the parking lot from Huff Court?
Yes, there are two gates at this entryway here to get into the Auto Mall parking lot.
And so is the lawnmower between those two gates?
No, I'm sorry, it is further down the sidewalk where these parked cars are located.
No, but I mean, just for purposes of the record, that area is midway or somewhere between those two gates. Am I making myself clear?
Where the lawnmower was found?
Yes.
The lawnmower was found on the same sidewalk approaching those two gates.
Well, there's a gate at the top, is there not?
Yes, where Mr. Buchanan went into the parking lot.
That would be here
Yes.
at the top. And there's also a gate down here, is that correct?
Yes, I'm sorry.
And I was just trying to indicate that it was at a point between those two gates.
Yes, I'm sorry. If I could explain, there are two or a set of gates here to enter that mall, but they were chained shut. And the lawnmower was indeed located on the sidewalk between the two sets of gates.
Now, you indicated that you observed a blood trail. Can you show us, does this diagram show where the trail of blood was?
It does.
And can you, just using the laser pointer, show us where that was?
Sure, the blood trail started in the same area where the lawnmower was found. There was actually blood found on these vehicles as well. And the trail went just right down the sidewalk, up the little elevated road into the parking lot for Fitzgerald, and continued up in front of these cars that were parked there to the point where we found Mr. Buchanan had collapsed.
You can keep that if you want.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, in any of these areas, did you find any projectiles or fragments or shell casings?
We did not.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Sure.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibits 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, and 33. Now, I believe at this point, State's Exhibits 23 and 33 are already in evidence, but if you would take a look at those and tell me if you recognize those.
These are all prints of the photographs that morning at the crime scene.
Your Honor, at this time, we'd move the admission of Exhibits 24 through 32.
All right, ma'am, I'll receive them.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is Exhibit 23, and what is that?
This is a view looking down the sidewalk on Huff Court towards Nicholson, and it shows where we found the lawnmower at rest halfway off the curb.
This is State's Exhibit 24. What are these red things?
They actually started out life as soccer cones, but I use them now to mark blood trails or other related patterns of evidence. So what I have done here is marked the blood trail, which I found starting at the lawnmower or the resting place of the lawnmower and going up towards the gates for the parking lot.
And these are numbered sequentially?
They are.
State's Exhibit 25. What does that show?
This would be a blood droplet that is close to where the lawnmower was found, and you can see that there are actually a couple of round blood droplets in the photo.
And are these approximately here and here?
Yes.
This is State's Exhibit 26. It's hard to see with this glare. And what is this showing? What's the shadow cast here?
The shadow is cast by a car that's parked along the sidewalk there. This picture is depicting, well, this is cone number 2, so it is the next series I photographed in that blood trail, and there are actually 2 linear patterns of blood visible in that picture.
Is that what we're looking at here?
Yes, and then there's another one at the top to the right of number 2.
And this is 27. Does it show closer up?
Yes,
The second one that you were just describing?
yes.
This is State's Exhibit 28. What was this, Ms. Clements?
This is a vehicle that was parked very close to the area where Mr. Buchanan was actually shot. And what we found on the trunk of this vehicle was what appeared to be a blood handprint.
And this is State's Exhibit 29. Again, this is a little hard to see, but what are we looking at here?
It is difficult to see because it's a dark colored blood on a dark colored vehicle. But what we're looking at here are a couple of areas of blood on the trunk area and
Are those here
yes,
and here?
yes, the trunk or the quarter panel and the spoiler of the car.
This is State's Exhibit 30. What are these?
These would be items or the locations, 3 or 4 in that blood trail, and they are indicating some more blood spatter areas within that trail.
And this is State's Exhibit 31. What is this?
These are more blood droplets that are found in that cluster that I have marked number 3.
State's Exhibit 32.
These are also blood droplets that are marked with the cluster marked number 4.
And were these on the outside of the fence or on the inside of the fence?
These are on the sidewalk outside the parking lot.
Did you take photographs with cones of the blood trail that went into the parking lot?
I did. I'm sorry, with cones?
Yes.
Yes,
But what we're looking at is on the sidewalk on the outside.
that's correct.
And this is State's Exhibit 33. What does this depict?
This is where Mr. Buchanan finally collapsed in the parking lot. These are his items of clothing that were cut off him by the paramedics in order to try to save his life.
Now, these items that are marked 6 and 7, are these items of his clothing?
Yes,
And did you collect those and take them with you?
I did.
Now, in an effort to recover any bullet fragment or shell casing. Did you use any special equipment to try to find anything?
Yes, we did use the metal detector to try to find any sort of metallic fragments that might be a projectile or a shell casing, and we didn't find anything.
Your Honor, I'm wondering, since it's very difficult to see the colors of this, if we could just pass these around while she's continuing with her testimony.
Sure, ladies and gentlemen, just pass them around to each other, and when they come around back to you, sir, Joanna will come and pick them up.
And do you recall, Ms. Clements, about what time it was that you left the scene?
I believe it was about 2:45 in the afternoon.
And did there come a point later in time that you examined the items of clothing that you had collected from the scene?
Yes, I did.
And could you tell us what these were? I know we've looked at the numbers 6 and 7, but what were in 6 and 7? What were the types of clothing?
May I refer to my notes?
May you what?
She wants to refer to her notes, Your Honor.
Oh, certainly, sure.
That's fine with me.
The item that was marked, item 6, was a pair of shorts with a belt that belonged to the victim. Item 7 were 2 shirts Mr. Buchanan had on, a t-shirt and I believe like a button-down shirt over the top of it that morning. And then item 8 was his ball cap.
His ball cap?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you said that at a later point you actually looked at his clothing to look for something else.
Yes, I did.
Do you remember what that was?
I believe, yeah, this occurred on a Thursday morning, and I know it was the following week. I believe it was maybe 5 or 6 days later.
And what did you find, if anything?
I found a number of very, very small fragments of what I believe to be a bullet or a projectile.
Were they lead fragments from your observation?
I beg your pardon?
Lead fragments,
They were certainly metallic, yes.
metallic.
Yes.
And what did you do with those items?
I packaged them up so they could be analyzed by a firearms examiner.
And when you say you packaged them up, could you describe to the jurors what you did?
Sure. They were just basically removed by hand from the material and placed in appropriate evidence packaging, which in this case was an envelope, and sealed up.
And you said that when you sealed them up, what did you do with them then?
I believe they were turned over to the detectives so they could be taken to the HEF lab for examination.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Sure.
This is State's Exhibit 37. Do you recognize that?
Yes, this is the packaging that I have labeled the suspected projectile fragments and located from the victim's shirt previously collected as item CS07.
And does it have your married name on there or your maiden name?
This has my maiden name and ID number.
And was it in a sealed condition after you finished doing your work with it?
After I packaged it, I sealed it with evidence tape and initialed across the tape and also dated when it was sealed.
Now, what is the date reflected on there with your initials?
The date reflected is 10/11/02.
And is that the date, pardon me, that you recovered them from the clothing?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, we move Exhibit 37 into evidence.
Yes, ma'am, I'll receive it.
And I have no further questions for Ms. Clemens at this time.
All right, Mr. Mohammed?
Yes, ma'am, you said you're a crime scene detective?
I'm a forensic specialist.
Okay, forensic.
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned something about a video in the area?
Yes,
You wouldn't happen to have that with you, would you?
I don't. I don't have possession of any of the evidence from this case, but I do know that it exists.
Okay, were you also privy to videos from surveillance cameras in the area?
I did not recover any kind of videos from surveillance cameras in the area.
Okay, and you also mentioned the cigarette butts. Were they fresh cigarette butts or did they have a name on them?
As you can imagine, the streets are full of old cigarette butts. When we're collecting cigarettes, we try to look for ones that don't look aged by weather conditions or if they've been run over by cars or something like that. So to answer Mr. Muhammad's question, they appeared to be relatively recently deposited. I would say at least within the past day or two.
Okay, can you point to where you found them on that location?
Yes, sir.
Please.
Actually, Your Honor, it'd be better to use the photo. I don't think that this map shows where I found the,
You want the photo or that big diagram? Will this work?
either one.
Will this work? Do you want that aerial behind you? Is that better?
I think I could,
Just take a look behind you and see and tell us
sure.
if that's the one it's going to work better.
I think the aerial would be a better view. Okay.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, the majority of the cigarette butts were found in the updated parking lot. These were collected when I was searching the area thinking.
Excuse me, ma'am, I just wanted to know where they are. Can you show me where they are?
Sure, the FDA parking lot where the cigarette butts were found is this area right here, just below the yellow sign that says Huff Court.
Okay, did you find cigarette butts anywhere else?
Yes, there was also a cigarette butt found. I have it listed as on, two were found actually on the ground at the southern driveway leading to the back of the lot of Fitzgerald Automotive.
Can you point out where that's located, ma'am?
Yes, those would be the locked gates I referred to, just here, this southern entrance.
Okay, is that area the same where allegedly Mr. James Buchanan was shot?
He was cutting the grass in that same general area, yes.
In the same general area?
Yes,
You wouldn't happen to know the brand of those cigarettes, would you?
I do have them listed.
You do?
Yes,
What's,
all of the cigarette butts that were collected are listed as Marlboro brand. Some of them had gold print, some of them had green print, and some had blue and gray print.
do you have the name designated from where you found them are? Where you found the cigarette butts, do you have them designated, the name of them, where you found them?
I'm sorry, the name of the cigarette butt?
Yeah, where they was located.
Yes,
Okay, can you tell me the ones that were by Mr. James Buchanan, the name of that cigarette butt?
okay, those are both Marlboros. One had a tan filter and one was a white filter with green ink.
Okay, thank you. One more question, ma'am. To your knowledge, did anyone retrieve any videotaping of the areas from the buildings and stuff like that?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
This is now warm up for what will be a 12-minute 200. So we're gonna do the first 5 minutes. I take it back, we're not. We're gonna go to page 8. That just makes sense. Hold on. No, we are gonna do the first 5 minutes. 12-minute begins on page 6. That's where the test begins. So 5 minutes at 200, reading in 15s. I am the witness.
I am attorney for the plaintiff, Mr. Matthews.
I am attorney for defense, Ms. Porter.
I am the court.
Okay, here we go.
Mr. Matthews, for the record.
You know what, let's do this in 14s, okay? Thank you.
Mr. Matthews, for the record. Were there any problems in October, November, or December that she was going to pay rent?
She promised all the way along she was going to pay the rent.
Let's go through the period of time. After she refused payment of the rent in October, she had involved the building department in the situation at that point.
Yes, and so I was basically trying to do everything I could to satisfy both parties.
Okay, now,
I called the plumbers out, I called the roofers out, and I was actively trying to solve any problems because my cash flow is real important to me.
that's what you discussed earlier. Now I'm trying to show you some documents which I've shown to Mrs. Porter concerning documents from the city.
Do you want these marked individually or collectively?
They can be collectively.
All right, the clerk will staple the documents together and mark them People 7.
For the record, one is a November 4th, 2006 letter saying they received the complaint, and then there's a letter on January the 6th saying she re-inspected it.
Your letters written by the Building Safety Department, are they?
Yes,
Proceed.
Mr. Pruitt, could you put that aside for a minute and just let me ask some questions? We're going to get into that. You were testifying that basically you had to get through this inspection. You testified yesterday you put a new roof on. After the roof was put on, did you again contact Vesta about paying rent?
yes, I did.
And that would be like in November or so?
Yes, it would probably be in December by this point.
Did she indicate she was going to pay rent at this time?
She said that her and her attorney were going over something.
All right. So we're right up to the point where we ended yesterday.
They were starting to stall me off, basically, is what they were doing.
When you filed the unlawful detainer, did you prior to that time give her a notice to pay rent or quit? Let's call it a 3-day notice.
Yes, sir, I did.
And you put down that she owed approximately how much at that time?
At that point, she owed me $3,600.
And was that just an estimate based on the 3 months that she had not paid, October, November, and December?
Yes.
All right. Now, did you know for a fact whether she paid the September rent?
My records indicate that there was some problem with the September payment. My records show that I never received the September payment because it was a reversal payment. It was a payment that, again, a payment was made, the check bounced, again, it was the bank's fault, and then my bank contacted me about the same problem again. And I'm not sure, sir, to be real honest, whether I was reimbursed for the September rent or not. I listed it in my book as, I think,
Well, it shows unrecorded.
as unrecorded.
Which one is this?
I think it's number 2, the one from the broadcasting company stationery.
All right. The jury is later going to see this, but this is what you gave to Vesta when you served her with the 3-day notice.
Yes,
And you went over and you testified in front of the court earlier, you know, how much she held for June, how much she paid and so forth. And your feeling is that, quite honestly, she might have paid the September rent, but you just don't have it?
well, the check bounced, and if they paid it, the amount is not recorded for September.
She may not have even paid September rent.
I'm not really sure, sir.
I'm going to ask you to identify this check. Is this the check that bounced?
This check in October is stamped stop payment.
Okay, so she apparently stopped the payment at that point.
Yes,
Can we have that marked?
actually, it went through my account and bounced, and then stop payment was placed on it.
So your feeling is unless Vesta Clinton comes up with some checks today for September rent, you're not aware of September rents being paid?
No, I'm not, sir.
Excuse the court. This check has not previously been marked.
It has not previously been marked.
Plaintiff's 8.
Now, when you gave her the 3-day notice, did you give her the benefit of the doubt about that September rent?
Yes, sir, I did.
In other words, you didn't count that into the $3,600,
No, I didn't.
and you calculated another month's rent for all those withholdings?
No, yes. I calculated additional fees from $2,700 to $3,600, which was payments that I didn't receive the payments in full.
Well, meaning that she deducted $542 on one occasion?
Yes, so the other $900 would be in addition to the $3,600, which would be $4,500 at this point.
In your opinion, she owed you definitely $3,600?
I knew definitely I had not recorded October, November, and December. September was questionable in my mind, so I did not put it in the unlawful detainer. It was my record-keeping problem.
Did you receive January rent?
No, sir.
All right. And then she began to pay in February, correct?
Yeah,
We're here to determine damages. So your damages are the $3,600 that you asked her to pay when she moved out. And of course, you filed an action December 31st and you didn't get the January rent?
no, sir.
All right, she owes $3,600 plus the $900 in January?
Yes, sir.
All right, now have you had to hire an attorney, namely myself, to conduct this case?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay, you started yourself. You failed an unlawful detainer yourself?
Yes, sir. Stop. That would have been filed.
What did I say?
Failed.
Oh,
We're gonna do it one more time. Okay, because the second take today does not have a moment. So we'll do this one more time the same way. It's 210.
Mr. Matthews, for the record, were there any problems in October, November, or December that she was going to pay the rent?
She promised all the way along she was going to pay the rent.
Let's go through the period of time. After she refused payment of the rent in October, she had involved the building department in the situation at that point?
Yes, and so I was basically trying to do everything I could to satisfy both parties.
Okay, now,
I called the plumbers out, I called the roofers out, and I was actively trying to solve any problems because my cash flow is real important to me.
that's what you discussed earlier. Now I'm trying to show you some documents which I've shown to Mrs. Porter concerning documents from the city.
Do you want these marked individually or collectively?
They can be collectively.
All right, the clerk will staple the documents together and mark them, People 7.
For the record, one is a November 4th, 2006 letter saying they received the complaint, and then there's a letter on January the 6th saying she re-inspected it.
Their letters written by the Building Safety Department, are they?
Yes,
Proceed.
Mr. Pruitt, could you put that aside for a minute and just let me ask some questions? We're going to get that in. You were testifying that basically you had to get through this inspection. You testified yesterday you put a new roof on. After the roof was put on, did you again contact Vesta about paying rent?
yes, I did.
And that would be like in November or so?
Yes, that would probably be in December by this point.
Did she indicate she was going to pay rent at this time?
She said that her attorney and she were going over something.
All right, so we're right up to the point where we ended yesterday.
They were starting to stall me off because it's basically what they were doing.
When you filed the unlawful detainer, did you prior to that time give her a notice to pay rent or quit? Let's call it a 3-day notice.
Yes, sir, I did.
And you put down that she owed approximately how much at that time?
At that point, she owed me $3,600.
And was that just an estimate based on the 3 months that she had not paid, October, November, and December?
Yes, sir.
All right, now, did you know for a fact whether she paid September rent?
My records indicate that there was some problem with the September payment. My records show that I never received the September payment because it was a reversal payment. It was a payment that, again, a payment was made, the check bounced, again, it was the bank's fault, and then my bank contacted me about the same problem again. And I'm not sure, sir, to be real honest, whether I was reimbursed for the September rent or not. I listed it in my book as, I think,
Well, it shows unrecorded.
as unrecorded.
Which one is this?
I think it's number 2, the one from the broadcasting company stationery.
All right. The jury is later going to see this, but this is what you gave to Vesta when you served her with the 3-day notice.
Yes,
And you went over and you testified in front of the court earlier, you know, how much she held for June, how much she paid, and so forth. And your feeling is that, quite honestly, she might have paid the September rent, but you just don't have it?
well, the check bounced, and if they paid it, the amount is not recorded for September.
She may not have even paid September rent?
I'm not really sure, sir.
I'm going to ask you to identify this check. Is this the check that bounced?
This check in October is stamped stop payment.
Okay, so she apparently stopped the payment at that point.
Yes,
Can we have that marked?
actually, it went through my account and bounced, and then stop payment was placed on it.
So your feeling is unless Vista Clinton comes up with some checks today for September rent, you're not aware of September rents being paid?
No, I'm not, sir.
Excuse the court, this check has not been previously been marked.
It has not previously been marked.
Plaintiff's 8,
Now, when you gave her the 3-day notice, did you give her the benefit of the doubt about that September rent?
Yes, sir, I did.
In other words, you didn't count that into the $3,600,
No, I didn't.
and you calculated another month's rent for all those withholdings?
No, yes. I calculated the additional fees from $2,700 to $3,600, which was payments that I didn't receive the payments in full.
Well, meaning that she deducted $542 on one occasion.
Yes, so the other $900 would be in addition to the $3,600, which would be $4,500 at this point.
In your opinion, she owed you definitely $3,600.
I knew definitely I had not received October, November, and December. September was questionable in my mind, so I did not put it in the unlawful detainer. It was my record-keeping problem.
Did you receive January rent?
No, sir.
All right, and then she began to pay in February, correct?
Yeah,
We're here to determine damages, so your damages are the $3,600 that you asked her to pay when she moved out, and of course, you filed an action in December 31st, and you didn't get the January rent?
no, sir.
All right, she owes you $3,600 plus the $900 in January?
Yes, sir.
All right, now have you had to hire an attorney, namely myself, to conduct this case?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay, you started yourself, you filed an unlawful detainer yourself?
Yes, sir. Okay, that's the end of
It's in
this
file.
one. Mhm.